right, here we go.
Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin, what is going on? Oh, yep, got perfect timing.
Sorry.
Got a mouthful of beer.
I did. I had to cut it short. Good evening.
Good evening. And welcome to another episode. Welcome you listeners and you viewers now on camera. Great to be here. You may notice that we've got a little bit of a different setup tonight. We're still kind of experimenting with this whole video thing and figuring it out, but we're having fun, and hopefully you're having fun listening and getting some good info out of it.
And I can see the clock for the first time, so that makes me happy. I can know how long we've been going and when it's time to stop. It's a beautiful thing.
We'll be cutting our episodes to 15 minutes going forward.
And I'm loving this beer, Siberian Exile. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I tell you what, man. Thank you for bringing this Siberian Exile from Six Bears and a Goat. Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
What'd you say the alcohol content is? Like 10%?
10 and a half. 10 and a half. Yeah, all you need is one.
All right.
You're good.
Yeah, so if I start getting slurry stupid here in a little while, you'll know why.
I'm gonna take my time with this one.
All right, so what's going on, man?
I'm excited about this new setup. I'm excited about video so that we can, I'm imagining an audience out there that we can look at. I'm excited about progress and getting better and, well.
Learning as we go.
Figuring
it out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the last one was a little too,
Kevin was concerned that his package was being revealed as we sat on the couch.
It was a.
I wasn't looking at your package.
I know. Well, I wasn't either, and I didn't even notice it. It was Paula. She was like,
hot damn, that's your wife. She should be looking at your package.
Yes, she was.
But she shouldn't be using a video to do that, man. Come on.
Oh goodness, yeah, that was like, she's like, way too much package going on there for this podcast. We gotta.
Oh, we've got some package sensitivity occurring.
Yes, we do. Ooh. I wonder if people can tell I'm blushing. I'm not.
You sure about that?
Yeah. Anyway, all is well.
Yeah.
All is well. And
yeah. So there's no packages visible in this new recording setup.
Bryant threatened to not wear pants, but I can assure you he is wearing pants because I didn't want to deal with that all
We're sitting way too close. He's like,
exactly.
You're going to have to put some pants on.
Right, exactly. Anyway, it's good to be here. I'm excited.
I am as well. Good to be here. Monday nights are always enjoyable. Great conversation, and I think I shared with you the other day, and I got to share this with everybody else that's listening. Had some great unsolicited feedback from some of my club brothers that are regular listeners of this podcast, and I just I appreciate that immensely. And one of the things that was really key was the comment that one of them made about the fact that we are both very knowledgeable and have the ability to relate information about personal development and how to live a happier, more joyful, successful life and so on. And we spent a lot of fucking time talking about politics in the last couple months.
Yeah.
And we should stop that.
We should stop.
Because that's not our sweet spot.
No, it's not.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I got to tell you, man, that
I do too.
That feedback was invaluable. And thank you for for putting that out there. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know I told you that when you said it to me, and I certainly appreciate it. Valuable information.
You bet. And I mean, most of the country has a terrible distaste in their mouth for politics right now. Anyway, maybe always. And,
and I know I'm not naming who said it, and that's fine because he knows I'm talking to him.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done talking about it. So yeah, let's stick to our sweet spot and continue to make progress that way. I like it.
Sounds good to me.
Speaking of that, yeah. It's your topic.
So I'm going to start or identify this topic by asking a few questions. And the first question is, have you ever been in a situation, maybe at work, maybe some other thing in your personal life where you've taken on a new task, maybe been given a new assignment or a promotion, and you just don't feel like you belong there, don't feel like you've deserve the right to be in that position? Or do you get, complimented about something and that makes you feel uncomfortable, and you don't know how to, take that compliment because you feel like what you're being complimented for is something that just, happened because of luck or, whatever reason, but it wasn't because you're actually good at what you do. You ever had anything like that happen?
Many times. And in fact, the way you just introduced that, and with that lead in, not even yet saying what it is, although it might be obvious to many, I thought of even more just because you presented it in a way that thought, yeah, oh my goodness, yes.
What else you got? What other ways does that jump out at you?
Yeah.
And then we'll call the topic out.
It brought back different memories because I was going through the process today when I was preparing for this of thinking about when and where and what were the circumstances around the times, and there's something about the way you said it made me think of even more that just came flooding back into my mind, and I'll share them. I mean, one of them is this very podcast. I did think about that, but you made me think of it in a new way. Here we are. When we started, I'm thinking, who am I? Who am I to be here talking to anybody about anything? Honestly, I'm just an average guy with average intelligence and average motivation. And why should I be able to be on a podcast and say something that has any meaning to anybody? You know what I mean? I mean, are you?
Yeah.
Do you feel?
Yeah, I think we both had those feelings and had shared those in conversation. And so what we're talking about, folks, is we're talking about a phenomenon that, as it turns out, is pretty damn common in our society, and actually I'd say across the world. It's called, it goes by a few different names, but ultimately it's imposter syndrome. And it is a recognized situation where you feel like you're in an area that's outside your depth. Maybe you don't deserve to be doing what you're doing. You don't feel comfortable taking compliments or accepting the accolades or really identifying with the accomplishments that you've achieved because it just happened by osmosis. It wasn't really anything that had to do with you and your abilities. It's the number of people, when I was doing some research on this, the number of people that have, I don't want to say suffer from this, because it's not, I don't think it's a mental illness, and I don't want to, identify it as such. I think it's just something that can occur, and I mean, the numbers are high, like in excess of 70% of all people have experienced at one time or another this phenomenon of imposter syndrome or imposter disorder, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you feel like you're an imposter. You're in a situation where you're receiving credit or praise or recognition for something that you've done or that people believe you've done, and you're like, wow, I've really fooled them. The word that stuck out to me today as I was thinking about this, and as in the literature when you read about it, is the word fraud. Yeah. You feel like a fraud. That, wow, they the whole thing, what's the phrase? You can fool some people some of the time. You sort of feel like that. Wow, I've really fooled them into believing that I'm better than I am, and I hope to God they don't figure this out and figure out who I really am, because if they do, I'm dead.
Yeah, Man, imagine the anxiety and the fear associated with walking around feeling that way.
Yeah.
Not good. So I certainly believe that there's folks that are listening to this right now or watching this podcast right now that are the lights coming on and they're identifying with this very phenomenon because they've experienced it or are experiencing it themselves. And what we hope to do tonight is to offer some information to you that is helpful or maybe helpful to help you shake this and figure out some strategies to not get caught up in this trap. I don't know that there's necessarily a cure, and at the same time, I think there's some things that you can do to not get sucked in down this nasty rabbit hole.
And indeed, and I'm going to jump to the end, and then we'll come back and fill in the middle along the way. But I back to what we started with, and that was this podcast. When you asked me to do this, and I immediately said yes. My immediate reaction was, "We got to do this. Yes, let's do it." It didn't take long after I said yes for me to start thinking, "Wow, I really want to do this," because people are going to be listening to this stuff and hearing this stuff, and it's going to be out there forever. And oh my goodness, and are we good enough? Am I? And I'm, a lot of it was, am I good enough? So here's the end. One of the strategies for overcoming this syndrome, imposter syndrome, is to press on, is to press through it, is to keep going. And I'm not saying we're the greatest thing ever, but what I am saying is we are adding value. There are things that we are putting out there in the air that people are grabbing onto, and I know that because people are telling me that, and I know they're telling you that as well. So
yeah, that's a great point. And push forward, because action overcomes fear.
There you go.
It absolutely does. It and that doesn't mean it's gonna overcome and it'll never come back. It's a process and something that you have to continue to work through. I was amazed to hear about and read about some of the folks that you would consider very successful that admitted or have admitted to dealing with this very syndrome.
Right.
And some of the ones that jumped out were Maya Angelou.
Yep.
Albert Einstein.
Yep.
And this is a more modern day example, a guy by the name of Seth Godin.
Mm-hmm.
And you may recognize that name. He's got 19 plus bestsellers on the New York Times bestseller list. Books that he's written about marketing, and he has said in different forums that he's just fearful of the fact that one day one of these publishers is going to call him out and say, who are you to be writing all these books about marketing?
Right.
How are you qualified to share all this information? And just has that, what many would think is unreasonable, an unreasonable fear. And yet it's very real. And I think many of us have felt that type of fear in other scenarios. And so it's cool to see. I don't know, you don't wish anything bad on somebody like that, but it's actually somewhat comforting to realize that someone that has the level of success that a Seth Godin does with all the bestsellers that he's written, and he deals with this same phenomenon.
Right.
So.
And we've talked about mindset before. We've talked about things that self-talk and all of this stuff that you can do in your head to make yourself better, but also to make yourself worse. And that's really the point I wanted to make, is you can get stuck, and I know I have at times, you can get stuck in this sort of negative downward spiral where you just keep reinforcing, boy, I am not as good as everybody thinks I am. I do not deserve this recognition. I really have fooled them into believing that I'm somebody that I'm not. And it can spiral down into true mental illness, pathological. I'm talking about depression.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, low self-confidence. I'm talking about stress. All of those kinds of things can really have an impact. And when you see that happening to yourself, man, recognize it and figure out, first of all, admit that it's happening. And then we can talk about strategies for getting a hold of it.
Yeah, definitely a map to places you don't want to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you did this, but other than the podcast, can you think of other times in your life where that you did you do what I did and
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
List times where you thought where this actually happened in your life?
So I didn't list them out because they're kind of, they're in my head because they're profound experiences and they never go away.
Right.
For me, one in particular that jumps out, and it actually, I think, in many ways had a happy ending. Stop. Don't go anywhere with the happy ending thing.
Oh.
But
well, I don't know what you're talking about.
yes, you do. Anyways, one of the ones that jumps out to me is when I was working in law enforcement and I was promoted to the position of captain, supervising a division of detectives, the criminal investigation division. I had never served as a detective, and I think I've shared this on a podcast before or something, related this to another point that we were making. But I'd never served as a detective. I had come up in the patrol ranks and moved around to a couple different places, but never in that criminal investigative role. So because of my accomplishments and things that I had done in these other positions and the capability that others saw in me, I was promoted to that position of captain, and it was one of those kind of self-reflection moments, like, oh, what the fuck am I doing here? These guys, they've been doing this stuff for years. They know way more about criminal investigations than I do, and so on and so forth. And it's easy to go down that bad path of questioning yourself. And ultimately, I was able to, and this wasn't like an instantaneous thing, right? So this is a process. These thoughts don't happen once and you fix them and then you move on. Stuff like this crops up periodically and you deal with it. And I think, for me, I really maintained a focus on what I was good at. And I wasn't there to be a detective. I wasn't promoted to be a detective. I was promoted to lead that unit and provide them with the things that they needed to do their jobs and to remove the barriers that were in their way of them doing their jobs efficiently. And when I kept focus on that, it kind of quelled that other bullshit about, you've never been a detective. How the hell do you know? Because that's not what I was there to do.
And that is precisely one of the strategies that the experts will say that you should do, and that is focus on your accomplishments, focus on your capabilities, focus on those things that you really are bringing to the table. And one of the ways that you can do that is by, if you were to remove yourself from the situation that you were in and look at it from on high and say, if somebody else was in my position and they were doing what I was doing, what would I think of them? And if you can honestly say, I think they're doing a pretty damn good job. Yeah. If you can remove yourself from it and look down upon yourself from it, as if you were somebody else, you almost always you'll say, yeah, I'm making a contribution. I'm adding value. And so that's great. That's you've demonstrated again, both that you were suffering from the syndrome, but also that you overcame it. By the way, it's not what I thought you were going to say.
Oh no! Here we go.
No.
What'd you think?
I was trying to psych you out and figure out what it was that caused you to pick this topic.
All right.
And it's not there anymore, but there was a picture right there last week of you lap dancing.
Yes, I hit it on the shelf up here.
Yeah, where is that?
It's up there behind some really good bourbon.
And I was wondering if you were having some.
I replaced it with the Graybeard Chronicles logo. Did. I thought that was better.
But I was wondering if you were getting some feedback somehow, either internally from yourself or from others. Did you guys were feeling good, and I think people might have been telling you you're a damn good lap dancer.
No, that was all me, man. Nobody encouraged me to do that craziness. I think what it is, and maybe some of the folks that are listening can chime in as they're thinking about this themselves. They obviously can't chime in right now. But I think for some reason it's not in my mind, when we have like Strength and Honor Motorcycle Club parties, it's not a real party till somebody gets a lap dance.
All right.
So
This is a tradition with you.
I think maybe that, in my drunken state, I thought that, this isn't a real party until somebody gets a lap dance. And damn it, I'm going to be the one to give one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was fun. I paid for it for a couple days. Not paid for the lap dance, just paid for my
Wow, that would have been really bad.
Yeah, an overindulgence. But you know what? It's not every day that your youngest daughter gets married, and you know what? You should celebrate that. And she clearly communicated before this whole thing went down. She wanted to have a party. She had a great time at her sister's wedding, and she wanted to, have that same kind of experience at her wedding. And damn it, I was going to make it happen.
You bet. You bet.
But
Absolutely.
yeah. So it was fun, and lots of other people contributed to making it happen. The only thing I did was just drink a whole shit ton of old fashions and act like a jackass.
There you go. You deserve that every once in a while.
Amen.
But you did remind me of when you said that the one sort of neon flashing sign example in my life was back again. It's a professional issue. It's when I got selected for a certain job, and it was when I was selected to command a ship, and the first ship that I was selected to command was as a very young Lieutenant JG, in '02, after only being at sea for 2 years. But that was the way they did it, and they selected me to be the commanding officer of a 95-foot patrol boat with a crew of 11. And I mean, on the day of the change of command, at the time I was a journaler, and I wrote down, they have no idea what they've done.
That's awesome.
I do not deserve to be here. I was scared out of my mind, and I know I've shared that with you before personally. And I don't know if I did it on this, but that was my definite case of imposter syndrome.
It's interesting that you share that, because as I was thinking about what you might share, that comes to mind, because I think that could be scary as fuck for anybody.
Ooh, man.
I mean, that's a huge undertaking.
It is. It is. I was like, yeah, anyway. What do I know? I've been at sea for 2 years, and they're putting me on this patrol boat, and this is not a Boston whaler. I mean, this is
No, that's a ship.
This is a ship with big guns and ammunition and authority and jurisdiction. And
did you save any of that ammo by chance?
I know. Man, just when you thought you had,
We could use that now.
Yes, we could. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate you sharing that, because
Anyway,
that is definitely something that I think could really put somebody in this category.
Yeah.
And there's lots of others too. So I know that the folks that are listening and watching have experienced this themselves, and hopefully you're getting some ideas on how to work your way through this. And one of the things that I wanted to share is something that I came across while doing a little research on this. Is really, there's 4 elements to this, and I think we've called out a couple of these to help you identify whether or not you're actually in that space. Are you dealing with this imposter syndrome? And these 4 are anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, and fear of failure. So if you've got kind of that little recipe of not good stuff going on as you think about a scenario, you're probably dealing with something like or straight up in the category of imposter syndrome.
Yep. And the one that really resonates with me is the whole perfectionism one. If you are a perfectionist, or you have those tendencies, and you're not performing that way in a position that you're in, that can cause all kinds of problems. And another one is, and I thought of other people who I know this to be the case. They grew up in an environment where usually their parents or some other adult authority in their lives had extremely high expectations of them,
right,
and wanted them to perform very well, and was pushing them to perform well, and they actually were performing well, but maybe in their own head they didn't think that they were doing as well as their family, that adult figure in their life thought they should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's a rough one right there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's other, talking about childhood, and there's other information out there about, what could cause this. And this is not a perfect science, so it's not one of these that, yes, that's exactly what it was. But these are just some examples. So if you grew up in a household where, there was a lot of negativity, Maybe
That's another one,
some
yeah.
domestic violence, alcoholism, situations where, folks were not raising you up, but maybe, beating you down and not complimenting your abilities, but being critical of everything that you did and so on. And it might be childhood. It could have been, some other point in your life where you've experienced this, but some type of trauma like this could be at the root of you experiencing this imposter syndrome.
Okay. Yep, absolutely. So,
And, you're the other thing about it is, it's not. It is a bad thing, right? I mean, I think we would all like to never have to deal with it, and at the same time, understand that you're among friends, right? So there's real people that don't talk about it until maybe now, that are experiencing the same thing, and we need to own that fear. We need to own the experience, acknowledge it, and figure out ways to work around it. And we can do that by having conversations with each other about experiencing this. We, as a society, do a really good fucking job of sharing good shit with people, but not telling people about the bad stuff that we experience that might help them to deal with those own bad experiences themselves, or maybe avoid them altogether. So stop being selfish and share that information with others, because it can help them.
We also do a good job of especially when we want to, reminding people of how, when I say we, I mean somebody who may not like you or like your stance or like your opinion, or might be competing with you or against you for a job or whatever. They will remind you of things and that cause this to get even worse. And the real danger behind somebody who kind of gets stuck in this mental place of imposter syndrome is that it robs you of your energy, it robs you of your courage, it robs you of your ability to be creative, because you're all sort of into yourself. Oh my goodness, they're going to figure out who I am. And instead of being bold and pushing hard and going on, you sort of retreat into yourself, and you got to get through that. You have to look at what you're doing from the outside perspective and say, this is what I need to do to get through this and press on. Because, when we back to when we started this, we weren't good, especially you.
Thank you. I needed that self-esteem hit.
That is not true.
Hey, you know what though? I'm glad you keep going back to the whole podcast thing, because one of the reasons that I asked you if you wanted to do this podcast with me, I mean, it wasn't because I liked you. But
you got me back. There you go. There you go.
No, and it wasn't because you were good looking or anything, but because that would be weird. No, seriously. I mean, you and I connected when we first met, and knew that we had similarities, cared about the same shit, and so on. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to ask you to join with me to do this podcast. But the other reason I wanted to ask you was because I was scared to do it by myself.
Okay. Yeah. I would have never done it on my own.
I own that. I probably would have never called that out loud to anybody, except for this particular scenario where I think I should. So yeah, I mean that's one of the many reasons that I asked you.
I don't think that I would have done it on my own either. So thank you for suggesting that we do, and well, here we are.
82 episodes later.
80. This is 82. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, how do you overcome it other than removing yourself from it, looking down, pressing on? Do you have any other techniques that are popping to mind, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna rattle these off, and I have to give the lady credit that I watched a video today. It was actually a TED Talk video, and the presenter was a lady by the name of Donna Sarkar. She's an executive from Microsoft, and she was sharing her experience, and I don't know what the date was on this. I didn't pay any attention to that because it really didn't matter. I thought it was good information, so it doesn't matter if it was 10 minutes ago or 5 years ago or however long.
Right.
But she had a 12-step recipe or spell to eliminate this.
Okay.
And I thought it was pretty cool, so I'll just rattle those off. The first thing is, and you probably will see where we've talked about some of these already. First, number one is acknowledge it. Own the feeling. Number two is ask yourself the question, what will I lose if I don't do this? or if I don't continue engaging in whatever it is I'm talking about here, whatever the scenario is. Number 3, what will others lose if I don't do it?
That's a good one.
Because that kind of shifts it to somebody else, right? So what am I potentially depriving other people of if I don't pull the trigger
The
on
value
this?
that I add to them, yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, break it down. What are you qualified to do? Number 5, which parts are you not qualified to do? Number 6, who is qualified to do these things, right? So the ones that you can't do, who is?
right.
Who's qualified to do them? And number 7, how did these people learn these things? There's information out there. We can learn anything that we want to learn should we decide to engage in that and put the effort forward to do it. So how did these people learn these things? Number 8, lift others up. So it's really easy to push other people down to achieve. It takes more strength to pull people up and compliment them, and everybody loves to be complimented.
I want to comment on this one. The reason I believe that this one is particularly effective is because it gets you out of your own head.
Right.
You're stuck in this spiral, and all of a sudden if you get out of that and start thinking about other people and what they're doing and lift them up and asking them to make the contributions and rise up and do their jobs and appreciate them for it, all of a sudden you're not focused on all the negativity going on in your brain. Great one.
All right, number 9, give it a test run. So whatever it is, give it a test run and evaluate how it's working out. Number 10, what advice would you give a friend? And I think you actually asked this question earlier. How would somebody else deal with this scenario, or what advice would you give them? So that's powerful. Number 11, create an imposter squad. So, other people feel this way, and other people need to start acknowledging that they feel this way. Create a group that can support one another, whether it's a text group or whatever, and you can, share your experiences, and they can help, slap you out of your funk when you start feeling, square up in that space. All right, and number 12 to wrap this up is, just understanding that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn.
Yeah. Okay.
And, I think it's powerful. So anyways, give her credit again. Donna Sarkar, she's a Microsoft executive, or at least she was at the time of the filming of this TED Talk that I watched. Check it out on YouTube. Good information. I think there's, and some of those will work for you, some of them won't, but I think you nailed it when it's all about, getting out of your head and start focusing on other people. And it's kind of I hesitate to use this, but because there's a new platform out there that goes by this name, but ultimately it's forgetting about the me and focusing on the we.
Okay, that's it exactly. I want to add to your list, but I didn't. This is just right out of my own head. One is, and these are very short, but I'm going to commentate on them a little bit. Associations. Who do we associate with? And think about who you hang around with in your life and you spend time with. Now, I don't know everybody you spend time with, but I kind of, I know you well enough to know where you spend your time and who you spend your time with. And there's not a whole lot of negative influences going on in your life that I can see.
I have a rule. I don't hang out with shitheads.
That is awesome, because there are a whole bunch of people out there who, if you stop and think about it for a second and you think, who are my associations? Who am I hanging out with? And you think, wow, there's some people who are dragging me down. I mean, you gotta cut those things off. You really do, because it's not helping you. Recognize your own expertise, and sometimes you have to write that down because you're thinking, I'm an imposter. They don't really know who I am. Take the time to sit down and write it down. What is my expertise? What value am I adding? What have I achieved? Then take that information and go talk to a mentor. I can come to you and say, do you think I'm adding any value here? Here's the things I'm looking at. Here's the things that I see. And ask for somebody else's opinion. Oh my goodness, they will shake you out of this negative mentality that you're in
that's
and
great
say,
advice.
what the hell are you doing? Of course you're adding value. Stop the madness. Stop this spiral that you're in. Ugh.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And then, as we've said before, right from the beginning, just keep going. Press on, get through it. Because eventually you get better, and we're better now. I mean, this is a hell of a lot better than the first video podcast.
Yes, with package overexposure.
Yes, exactly. Your shirt was hanging down, so you couldn't see yours. That was probably a good thing.
But you were looking for it? What that's kind of weird.
No, I wasn't looking, but I was contrasting between me and you were well hidden.
I'm just gonna leave that alone.
Enough package talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So one other thing that I got to call out,
Yep.
because I think this is something that can help us in many aspects of our life when it comes to, dealing with imposter syndrome or any other kind of negative thoughts or negative self-talk and these other self-deprecating behaviors that we often engage in. You need to create. So first off, I got to call this out. So you've got this little alter ego that's this little gremlin bastard that sits on your shoulder that, when you're talking about doing something, it has that little conversation with you like, really? You're going to do that? Because you kind of suck at that. Why, and you're afraid to do it. So why are you doing that? So what you need is an alter ego to that little gremlin, right? So
Right.
a Captain America or whoever that good person is on the other side that tells the gremlin to go fuck himself. Shut the fuck up, you angry little bastard. Go back in your cave where you belong and let's focus on good stuff because I am capable of this and I am good at this and I am going to do this. So I think that you can be helpful to yourself by creating that alter ego to that angry little gremlin that sits on your shoulder that talks shit about you.
Yep. Yeah. You remind me of Gerhard Schwantner.
Speaking of Gerhard,
Yeah.
we have got to have him as a guest on
Yeah,
here.
we do. He would be
We
great.
keep saying we're going to do that. What the hell's stopping us?
I mean, I'll have him next week.
We tried to call him after we had this very conversation after one podcast episode, and you're like, I'm going to call him right now. And you did, and we got his voicemail.
He called me back and he said, let's do it. And I told him it would be during the month of January, which it ain't going to happen.
You didn't say which January, though, did you?
I didn't.
You didn't say like January 21.
What would Gerhard say? What would he say right now? What do you think he'd say?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough one.
In your best Austrian accent, like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, man, I can't do it.
All right.
What,
okay.
what do you got?
No, I don't have anything.
I can't do it. You caught me.
It's self-talk.
Flat-footed.
I think I would say he's a big self-talk thing.
Yeah.
We 80% of the thoughts that we have in our head, this is fact, this has been studied, 80% of the thoughts that we have are negative thoughts about ourselves, about what's going on, about things around us. Man, you got to stop the madness. He would come up with something much better than that, but that is certainly one of the things. Stop the negative self-talk. Give yourself credit for who you are, what you do, what you know, the value that you're adding. Remove yourself from this circumstance and look at what you're doing from on high. It's a beautiful thing when you do that. And this imposter syndrome thing, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real, and it can be very negative, and it just sucks the energy out of you because you're like, oof.
And imagine how you talked about creativity and stifling it and so on. Imagine how much the world is not getting, how much the community that you live in, the community that you work in, how much are they not getting because you are allowing yourself to be controlled with this syndrome, this imposter syndrome.
Right.
Stop it.
Right.
Figure out ways around it and contribute the greatness that you have to offer in everything that you do.
Yeah. And truthfully, each one of us is a miracle. Seriously. I mean, we are a miracle, and we are unique, and we have unique contributions to make. There's nobody else that thinks like us, does like us, speaks like us. We are one and only, and we value, as a society, uniqueness. So what is it about you that is particularly unique? And sorry, it's starting to get to me. And
It's a powerful damn beer.
It is. And how can you leverage that? Seriously, how can you leverage that uniqueness and bring that to the world and give that to everybody? That to me is another one of the techniques to, I'm not an imposter. No way am I an imposter. I have significant contributions that I can make here in a very unique way.
Yeah. And here's a different spin, right? Talk about maybe guilting you into pushing forward. Are you a parent? Do you have children that are watching you and watching how you behave and watch how you deal with stuff, watching how you shy away from challenges or dive right in and take them on head on? Think about that when you're engaging, because your kids are watching and they need to see an example of somebody who has the courage to move forward, or has the wherewithal and the self-awareness, et cetera, to realize when they're being challenged and they're having thoughts that aren't productive, and they figure out a way around it, figure out a way to shake it and move forward and make the contribution that they're capable of making in their world. I think that there's a lot of folks out there that are shying away from things that they really want to do, that they would really love to do, because they're afraid to do it. And, what kind of example is that setting for your children?
Yeah, that's a great example, the whole parent and what you're doing for your children thing, because most people, unless somebody is truly kind of off the scale on a pathological path, if you ask most people, what are you doing well as a parent? They can rattle things off. I'm doing this and that and this. And then you say, why are you teaching, and what are you doing to teach the values that you want your children to have? And they'll be able to rattle that stuff off as well. And the reason I say that is because you're bringing those same things to every other part of your life. You just don't give yourself credit for it. You do as a parent very often. And, I'm not saying we're perfect. Goodness. As we know, there's no manual.
We're all far from that.
Right. There's no manual that applies to every situation that says, here's how you should handle this as a parent. You just kind of go with your gut and you go with your instincts and you add value and you mold and you shape those children. And guess what? By and large, not always, but mostly, they turn out just fine. In fact, they turn out great. In most cases.
In most cases. And when they don't, right, there's a book by a guy by the name of Larry Winget. The title of the book is Your Children Are Your Own Damn Fault. And he's a very in your face guy, motivational speaker, et cetera, but he's written a bunch of books, and it's your children are your own damn fault. So if your children are knocking it out of the park, if they're good people, they're respectful people, celebrate that. Because that didn't happen by osmosis. They're that way because of you. And if your children are assholes and they're fuck-ups, well, maybe some time for some self-reflection.
And I think that's good, and I think that's right. But I also just want to caution you and everyone that occasionally children make decisions and get stuck in patterns that really, once they become adults and they start making their own mistakes.
Kevin's trying to soften that blow I just delivered there a minute ago.
Well, because sometimes, truly, we are where we came from, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, you're on your own, and you can't blame your parents anymore. And
that's a valid point, because there's some really, really successful people that are knocking it out of the park and making great contributions to the world that had a shit show for a start.
Right.
And then there's some really, crappy people that are drawing society down, and they're a burden on their families and so on and so forth, that had the trust fund start from, the get-go, had the golden spoon in their mouth and so on, and they just jacked it up.
Yeah. You actually remind me of, I think I saw a documentary. There's a whole show on this. There was a young, I don't know how old she is now. She was a young lady when this film was made, and she was the product of a mother and father a biological mother and father who were both drug addicts, and her mother lived in crack houses, and it was just, kind of a rotating door of relationships and mental states. And there's something about this particular, when she was a little girl, she decided, I have enough maturity and wisdom to realize this is not good, and I'm going to take a different path. And she changed her life as a little girl with the most unbelievably horrible example to live by. I don't know if her parents get to claim credit for that, man. It's saying.
Yeah, well, anything that we say, you're going to be able to find an exception to, right?
Of course.
But I think in many cases it is accurate.
Yeah, you're right. No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your closing thoughts? Do you feel like we've covered this adequately?
I do. My closing thoughts are: it's real. It's also incredibly, well, I don't want to overstate it. It can be very destructive because of what it robs you of. It robs you of your energy. It robs you of your boldness. It robs you of your creativity. And you got to get a hold of it. And you got to realize, hey, each one of us is a unique person bringing unique value and contribution to the world. And chances are you're actually probably doing a very good job, and you just got to stop it. Stop the negative self-talk. Start realizing the value that you bring. Ask other people for help and advice along the way so that they can give you honest feedback.
Yeah.
And press on, press through it, keep going until it passes. Because emotions change. They do, especially with action.
Absolutely. So I would say in closing that vulnerability is not a weakness.
Ooh.
In many cases, it's a sign of strength.
Brene Brown. What's her name? Brene Brown?
I don't know.
Brene Brown, she'd like you. She wrote a book on it.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So it's not a weakness. Use it. Ask for help and identify what it is that you're dealing with. Own it, acknowledge it, and figure out ways to work around it and be successful in spite of it. That would be my guidance on this. And it's as we always say, it's ever important to focus on enjoying this ride. So no matter who you are or where you are or what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time
to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.
I think that was good.
I think it was good too. I think it was excellent.
Let me go kill that video up there and piss.
Yes.
A lot. Fucking studio is cramped.